Winter has arrived, Miami Dolphins fans. I know it's the summer, but this is the winter of the NFL season. If you're Game of Thrones fans, you know what that means. Winter is coming. We are in Siberia. We are in the stretch of 5 weeks where there is no practice. There are no availabilities. There is nothing but vacation for coaches, executives, and players until they rejoin the team in South Florida in late June. We've got training camp dates available to the fans. I believe there are 12 of them. Joining me is Isaiah Smalls, who is ready and willing to break down this training camp schedule for the Miami Dolphins, let you know when you're going to be able to see all of this exciting action that you're going to see from this team in 2025. Isaiah, how many practices do they have available to the fans?
So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11.
Okay,
11.
Hold on. Isn't there one that's a private for season ticket holders?
Yes, you're right. Yes, there's one that is a member day for season ticket members. However, so I guess there's 10. I mean, if you're one of those exclusive guys, then there's maybe 11 for you, but 10 just for the regular fan.
And when do they begin?
They begin on July 26th at 9 a.m. sharp. They close August 21st with the joint practice against the Jaguars, which I'm sure is going to be a hot ticket. You know, Travis Hunter, number 2 overall pick, will be in town. And apparently there's people that believing that they have the top 10 receiving core. So that'll be interesting to see how, I saw that tweeted out yesterday that they were ranked and I think they ranked the top 10 or top 8 receiving cores, and there's no Dolphins, but they had the Jaguars on there, which to me was a bit of a head scratcher considering Travis Hunter's a rookie. Don't get me wrong, Brian Thomas Jr. is pretty fire. He had a pretty solid rookie season, but I don't know. It just seems a little bit premature.
All but one of their receivers. This is crazy. Anyway,
you said what?
I can barely name all but one of their receivers.
Exactly. So it's a little bit confusing why they and I forget the group that had them ranked the top 10, but it's a head scratcher, and we'll see. We'll get a chance to see how they're looking firsthand. I know those joint practices are always fun for fans and for the media because you kind of get a first glimpse of XYZ talent. And I remember Jaden Daniels kind of lighting up last year. We kind of had a little bit of a precursor.
Woo!
What do you mean?
Carved them up like a
Yeah. It was bad.
No.
That was the reason why he became my fantasy football quarterback last year. After seeing,
did you? Oh,
yeah, he was on one of my teams. I definitely got a chance to grab him. So definitely a good look being able to check it out a little bit early. So,
I will say joint practice are the best evaluation for football teams. I can promise you that Jacksonville joint practice is going to feature nothing but starters because nothing but the backups are going to be playing in that game. So it'll be interesting to see how it transfolds, how it plays out. Training camp is right around the corner. We have wrapped up mini camp. As you know, we saw 2 practices of the mini camp practice. The final session was a walkthrough. We've seen about 4 OTA sessions, and I produced my superlatives for training camp. And later on in this podcast, we're going to get Isaiah's thoughts on those superlatives and some of the top performers, some of the areas of concern. But let's get on the Jonnu Smith conversation, discussion, debate. Jonnu Smith's agent has been given permission to have open conversations with teams regarding a new contract, setting up a trade, facilitating a trade. The Dolphins, according to Drew Rosenhaus, conversations are ongoing?
Are still fluid was the framework that Rosenhaus used on Sports Extra on Sunday night. Basically just meaning, hey, like we're still in conversation. He said that he believes that there might be a deal done by training camp, but at the end of the day, it's still still up in the air a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I mean, I believe we feel the same way on this. I don't think the Dolphins can afford to lose Jonnu Smith, considering the state of that tight end room and just the production that he brought last year.
Oh, definitely the production. I have a column that's going to be published in the Miami Herald which basically says Dolphins, if you trade Jonnu Smith along with Jalen Ramsey, who we already know is being traded for whatever, primarily his beef with Mike McDaniel and Mike McDaniel's beef with him. That's an impending divorce that hasn't been executed yet. But if you trade Jonnu too, you might as well call this the 2019 rebuild, because just like that offseason where you traded Ryan Tannehill, Laramie Tunsil, Kenny Stills, Robert Quinn, Kenyon Drake, Minka Fitzpatrick, not the offseason, but the season. That season you traded all of those top players for draft picks. You were basically purging your roster. And if you do that again and get rid of Jonnu Smith, who Tua has already said he's my guy.
That's my guy. Quote, for sure.
You will be beginning a purge, and you might as well say goodbye to everybody, because we're gonna be pulling the plug on that team, and on that season. It'll be interesting to see if they can find some common ground. The one thing I will say about negotiations is we do not know, as media members and as a fan base, what the Dolphins have on the table. We're all under the understanding that Jonnu deserves a raise, considering he's slotted to make just under $4.1 million. That's relatively half of what NFL starting tight ends make. In my column, I make the argument, find some common ground. That Mike Gesicki 3-year, $25.5 million contract. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. Let's make sure that Jonnu is here for the next 2 seasons, because that's probably where the guaranteed money is, and then figure it out as we go. Now, if Jonnu decides that he doesn't want to accept that offer, well, then enjoy playing on $4.1 million, because we're not trading you, and you're not going to hold out because you'll basically be playing for free. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm certainly rooting for Jonnu and even Zach Sealer, because I think he's also in line for a pay raise, considering he's making $8 million when average defensive tackles are making $16-17 million. But that Dolphins do have some business to do. But on the field, we saw some OTAs, we saw some mini camps, and I produced my superlatives. I would like to get Isaiah's thoughts on some of his superlatives. Primarily, I named Devon Achane as my top performer for the training camp. Now, this is the second straight offseason I've named him the top performer of the offseason program, primarily because without pads, which is the equivalent of flag football, Devon Achane is probably the most elusive player on the field, especially since Tyreek Hill was not practicing. Some people might say Jalen Waddle had that top performance. Some people might give it to Tua Tagovailoa. Who would you name your top performer of the offseason program?
See, you looking at the wrong side of the ball, sir. Defense wins championships. I'm saying Bradley Chubb. The amount of times that man was just in the backfield,
man. Who was he working against?
It doesn't matter.
Who was he working against?
It's kind of like what they say about the NFL schedule. You can only play who's on your schedule. You can't be worrying about who the Kansas City Chiefs are playing because they're not on your schedule.
Was he play against somebody who will be playing in the NFL in 2025? Play
against who is in front.
Was he being blocked by somebody who will be playing in the NFL in 2025?
Of you. And let's just pause for a second. It's not specifically what he does in the scrimmage portions. I'm looking at body language, right? I'm looking at how he's the first to every drill, how he's the first person in one of the defenders' face when they make a play, right? I'm looking at just the way he's carrying himself, right? Okay. This is a man who is excited to be back at practice, as we've seen, as he's talked about, as McDaniel has said multiple times, as Jalen Phillips has said multiple times, he's excited to be back at practice. And therefore, he deserves to be the top performer. Because it doesn't really matter who he's going against. You can only play against the people who you're lined up against, right? You can't. I understand what you're saying, because the people.
Ryan Hayes going to be in the NFL?
You said what?
Is Ryan Hayes going to be in the NFL? On an NFL 53-man roster?
Let's not play those games, because we can talk about the corner unit, right? And we can talk about, all right, so let's not. If you want to go one for one,
Devon was beating up on Jordan Brooks and Terrell Dotson.
Look, I understand what you're saying. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. All I'm saying is you only can control what you can control, and what he could control is getting in the backfield against the offensive lineman who might not be elite, right? But is on an NFL roster right now. And because they're on an NFL roster right now, they deserve to be treated as such. And so if Chubb is taking your lunch money like that, I mean Chubb is taking your lunch money. But to your point, this is what we expected from him, right? Like if you're lining up against twos and threes or fours and fives or whatever, and if you are a Bradley Chubb type player, you're supposed to dominate. Absolutely. And that's what I saw, right? I saw domination. And
I found it very interesting that they gave him twos and threes, never the ones. But hey,
look, he's just trying.
The ones would have given me a great evaluation of Patrick Paul. I'm just saying.
I agree with you, but as we talked about before, I don't think you can get a true evaluation of the offensive line until those pads are on. So if I'm guessing why he's not lining up against him, because it's not worth it, right? Because God forbid, another freak injury happens and now you're screwed. I'm not wishing that on anybody, but I'm just saying, like, would you rather get out of? I believe McDaniel was asked a great question. I forget who asked it, but like, what's more important? Is it getting out of the offseason program healthy, or is it the kind of mastering some of the execution points, right? And McDaniel said it's a mix of both, because God forbid, someone gets hurt when you're, playing patty cake out there with no pads on. Like, you're going to look like an idiot. And so thank God that didn't happen. It's a Bradley Chubb top performer. I'm standing on that one.
All right. I'll let you stand on it. Okay. Biggest addition in the offseason. I got James Daniels, 3 years, $24 million. Unfortunately, we were only able to see him in action one practice this offseason just because he's coming back from that Achilles injury. So that's not I've seen it, my eyes have been put on it. That's if he's not good, your offense is not going to be good, because you're right back to where you were last season with a trash offensive line. Who is your biggest addition this year?
I was going to say James Daniels as well. I mean, outside of the cornerback room, right, it is the offensive line that I think has the biggest question mark. And in part because there's going to be 3 new starters, 2 of which will be first-time starters in Patrick Paul and Jonnu Smith. Ooh, that was good. That one was a good one.
Is that how you say it? Savaiinaya?
Savaiinaya, yeah.
Savaiinaya, okay.
And so I think when you're looking at those 3 new, guys on the offensive line, you look to the veteran, the one that's been there a little bit longer, i.e. James Daniels, right? And so to me, that's the biggest addition, right? Because, look, he looked like an elite guard the first couple games of last season, right, prior to tearing his Achilles. And so there, I guess, is the biggest question mark surrounding James Daniels, right? After coming back from Achilles, how quickly will you be at 100%, right? Mm-hmm. I know they, as is common the case with injuries, you're never the same player that first year, right? It's the second year that you really start to trust yourself and you're fully back, right? And so signing somebody with obviously the Achilles isn't as bad as it used to be, but still, it's still a major injury. Signing, James Daniels, I'm sure gave fans a bit of a pause, right, considering the injury history. And, there was a guy last year who had some injury history and you didn't get him back till late in the year. And so hopefully that won't be the case this year. But James Daniel, is to me the biggest addition because of just what he could bring to the interior of that offensive line, with getting the push on those D tackles and trying to move guys, right? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of where this offense is kind of sputtered, right? The run game feeds in the pass game feeds in the run game. If you can't run the ball, you can't pass the ball, and we saw that abundantly clear last year. They could not run the ball, and a large part of it had to do with the guard play.
Now, let me get to this is a hot one. The most improved player of 2025 offseason is who, in your opinion?
So obviously we didn't get a lot of time to lay eyeballs on guys, but I'm going to say Chop Robinson, and this is why, right?
Okay.
Seeing him against Austin Jackson, again, as we said, until the pad's on, you can't really get a full evaluation of offensive line play, but I mean, he was making Austin Jackson look crazy out there, just pure speed, right? And so I'm choosing him. In addition, to what we saw on the field, but also like the opportunity that he has, right? Bradley Chubb is a guy that he looked up to coming, out of Penn State, right? So now, not only do you have a chance to play against one of your alongside one of your mentors, right? Now there's an opportunity where y'all could be on the field together, right? Last year he was doing a lot of coaching from behind the scenes, right? Which is important, right? Chop did learn a lot, but it's different. Chubb said it's different. Chop said it's different. It's different having him physically on the field, right? And so specifically, we even get to those, 3 edge rusher looks, right? When we could potentially see Chop, Chubb, and Jalen Phillips out there would be scary. So to me, Chop's going to be most improved just because, the speed that he had, right? It's going to be another year within Weaver's system, right? Because that rookie year, you're just trying to keep your head above water. Now he's comfortable. He knows what it takes to be a pro. He's going to attack it full force, and having, his big brothers, Chubb and Jalen there, I think will only, serve wonders for him.
Yeah, I had Jalen Wright as my top performer. You could tell he's young, he's hungry, he's redefined his body, making the most of every opportunity, and especially when you've got Ollie Gordon Jr. sitting there in the backfield. Ollie Gordon II, I'm sorry. Jalen Wright knows the clock is ticking, as do all backs. They got to make the most of their opportunities, so otherwise they're going to pass you by. Most impressive rookie for you in the offseason program was who?
I didn't really see a lot from guys. I mean, Ollie Gordon II was pretty impressive, right? He had some good runs, but I'm gonna go again defense, right? I'm gonna go Dante Schrader Jr. Right? He had a great that pick six. That pick six said something to me, right? I think for a defense that wasn't able to create turnovers for real last year, right? To see, even granted, like I said, it's mini camp, right? To even see guys make not just plays on the ball, but to turn those plays into points, to me is a very big deal, right? Regardless of who you're playing, if your defense can put up points, you're always going to take that 10 times out of 10, right? And so to have somebody back there that was able to do that, right? To me, it's a big, and hopefully, he can pan out and he'll, play for the Dolphins down the stretch. But, I'm just saying, just from what we saw, I was pretty impressed outside of Ollie Gordon's runs.
Yeah. I like Jonnu Sabinaya. Did I say it right? Savai-Naya. Yeah. I can't testify without the pads. I can't testify that he's real. He's real deal. He's athletic. I like his build. I like the fact that he's not a fat guy. He's a lean 320 pounder. It'll be interesting to see the work that he puts in to get his body right for training camp. This is your opportunity, because if you want to become an NFL starter on the offensive line, this is your moment. This is your chance. Area of concern for Isaiah heading into the 2025 training camp is what? Let me guess. Cornerback.
It's definitely cornerback. I mean, look, we saw it plain as day. They don't have any starters out there, just to be honest, right? Like, there's 32 NFL teams. I don't think these guys are starting on 25 of them.
Gator might start on.
I'm sorry. Yes. Let me clarify my statements. Boundary corners. I don't think there's any NFL starters on this roster currently. And that to me is a big area of concern, considering, that you didn't necessarily have to worry about that last year, right? You had Jalen Ramsey, obviously, future goal.
You just had to find a guy to play opposite Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, you just had to find a guy to play opposite of him, right? And, Kendall Fuller was serviceable for 11 games before the injury started to catch up with him. And then, you threw Storm out there. I mean, like, Storm was okay. Definitely looked like a rookie out there for sure. And so, I mean, he made some good plays during minicamp. To me.
Did he?
Yeah. He did. He made a few. I remember there was a few breakups that he had, like PBUs, and he had one good read where he would have, tackled the guy at the line of scrimmage, right? So to me, like, those are 3 instances where it's like, okay, obviously he didn't create any turnovers, but those 3 instances itself stood out to me. And so, look, man, I think it's a big area of concern. you're gonna go from a guy, you're going to go from having a guy that's gonna wear a gold jacket one day and just trying to find a guy opposite of him to two guys that are basically unknown, right? And that to me is scary, especially considering the playoff aspirations that the Dolphins have, right? Many teams aren't going into, aren't past the midway point of June and are wondering if we have not one but two outside starting cornerbacks, right? And that to me is unacceptable, and we'll have to see what gets done in the next month or so. But I mean, it's right now it's rough, and then if you look at the receivers, they're gonna have to play this year. They got to play Jamar Chase. They got to play DK Metcalf, right? I believe they don't play the Bucks this year. The list goes on, and to me, Ladd McConkey is another guy that they're gonna have to play. Bottom line, you got to get this figured out. It's a huge gap on your roster, and who knows? I mean, Jair Alexander is a name we've thrown out there before.
Garrett Wilson.
Who?
Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson. Yeah, another receiver elite receiver they're gonna have to play. To me, it's just concerning. I just don't understand how you can go into your, be a month out from training camp and not have two starting boundary corners. I just don't understand.
If I had to tell you to put $100 on one guy being a starter for 8 games this season, who are you putting your money on?
Kendall Sheffield.
Oh! Why?
Did you not hear the way McDaniel responded to you? Like your question when you asked about Kendall Sheffield and the reps he was taking? Just bottom line, like he has the most experience out of all of them, right? Like, I think, look, you can start Cater out on the boundary and move him, for nickel packages, you move him to the nickel, but I just would be concerned with, throwing a guy out there for, 10, 15 plays, right? And him not getting any snaps regardless, especially considering that like the guys in the room currently don't have a lot of experience, right? I would want to, if you're going to go this route, I'd rather just put feet to the fire, just throw them in there, see what you got. Because
get on 8 NFL teams is now the answer, is what you're saying.
Who else is the answer?
I'd actually put my money on Storm Duck.
Look, I believe Storm Duck. I believe him too. Those are my two. I
didn't say he'd be good.
Yeah,
I just said that's who I put my money on. Starter.
And then Cam Smith is going to get a chance. And you don't think they're going to give him a chance?
No,
for real.
I think that ship is sailed unless he comes out in training camp and is absolutely dominant.
Yeah.
And shows the coaches that, hey, this is my job. I'm ready. I think they've turned the page. I really do think they've turned the page. At some point, you have to realize the dog. If the dog don't bite, if the dog don't bite is a pup, the dog probably don't bite, and that puppy don't bite. I have seen Paul Soliai's the best example that I've seen of a Dolphins bust that's turned around and made something of his career. Paul Soliai, his first couple of seasons, he was a disaster. He was a laughingstock. They made fun of him in the locker room. And then he became a franchise, a nose tackle worthy of the franchise tag. Now, a lot of things had to happen to him, and pride really lit a fire under him. But Paul Soliai delivered. And he turned his career around. I can't tell you that many players. I'm gonna think about that and tell you another player who's turned their career around. But and they're not even gonna hide it. It's a maturity issue. And until that guy is ready to mature and realizes this is my last opportunity, which it's not because he's a second-round pick. Yeah, he's got to play with a hunger, a desire, a desperation. And I honestly believe that cornerbacks, and I learned this from the great cornerbacks that the Dolphins have had, Brent Grimes, Xavier Howard, both players had the memory of somebody with Alzheimer's.
That's what's required, though. You need that. You need the short-term memory because I
don't even think Xavier Howard never played well against DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't even think he even remembers any of those games because it's like out of my mind. Out of my mind. I'm not even thinking about it. And the good cornerbacks can do that. Now, Cam Smith, I don't think he's ever gotten past the fact that he's been a bust and he's struggled so far. Who is your biggest surprise of training camp? Who's the one guy that you said, I didn't know that was in him?
Well, you're skipping area of strength first, but so I can
go for area strength. It's just you want it. You go ahead, take your little layup. Go for your layup.
The defensive front. To me, I feel like
right,
this is
the whole front. Hold on, wait. The whole front.
I'm gonna go. Let's go edge rusher to edge rusher. Edge rusher to edge rusher.
The whole front. Okay.
Edge rusher to edge rusher.
All right. Hold on. You putting your name on Kenneth Grant?
Look,
and
Matt
Dickerson.
I'm low key. Look, I'm going. I'm going. Chubb, Grant, Sealer, Phillips, and then with Chop, getting thrown in there. I'm not focusing on the D tackles that much. I'm just saying.
You saw Grant do some work. Is that what you're saying?
That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying. No. I think Grant is gonna be one of those guys that is going to shine because Zach Sealer shines, right? I think if you look at his career and what he did at Michigan, right, he played alongside and a very elite D tackle at that level, right? And I think some players, they're just gonna look better when they're paired with elite talent, right? And so that's what I'm staking my claim on. I just believe that unit just could be just dogs. That can be the calling card of this team because if you get that interior push from Sealer and Grant, and then you got the guys on the outside closing the pocket. I mean, look, man, I think opposing offensive coordinators are going to be up nights trying to figure out ways to limit these guys, right? To me, that's the strength of this team, right?
I cannot put my name on them from this standpoint. Work that I saw was not done in pads. Yeah. I cannot testify on your behalf that you are a violent player, you are a physical player, you could hold the point, you could anchor, you could be the pillar of granite. Cannot do it, will not do it until I see some pads come on.
That's
and
great.
Then not just the pads, but the joint practices. Because when you're practicing against your teammate, sometimes you have gentlemen understandings and agreements.
Yeah.
Let's have 2 hours of stalemate, not make each other look bad, and get through this without hurting one another. Mm-hmm. Now, then there are also instances where Christian Wilkins just wants to beat Liam Eichenberg's face in every single day, just to show the coaches that, hey, he don't belong out here. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out when the pads come on, but I cannot vouch or testify for anybody. But I will say area of strength, in my opinion, was the edge rushers. I like what I saw from Chop. I like what I saw from Chubb. I know Jalen Phillips is going to look like a Greek god when he's finally cleared to practice. The question for me about that unit is, can they stay healthy? And are they deep enough? Because I don't know about Quentin Bell. I don't know about Cameron Good. I don't know about Mohamed Kamara. I don't know. Where are they from a depth standpoint? That leads me to biggest area of surprise. To me, it was Willie Gay Jr. And I know this guy's a 55-game starter. This guy's a champion. He's won championships with the Kansas City Chiefs, but he hasn't really contributed going back to last season. The Chiefs said bye-bye. Obviously, there's something there where he's got suitcases full of luggage. The question is he still a good player? And when I watched those practices, I saw a playmaker just like last year, Anthony Walker Jr. To me, my eyes said, hey, this guy's good. This guy's for real. This guy can play. And he ultimately ended up being a starter. I think Willie Gay Jr. can end up being a starter for this Dolphins team. I don't know where, but I like it. And I'm curious to see what happens when you invest in it.
No, I that was the guy that I had chosen as well. Look, he was in the backfield on multiple occasions, right? He had, I believe, a pick 6, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty impressive, right? And just from, for me, I'm looking at the little things, right? And his energy, similar to Chubb, was just kind of electric. I don't know what it is. I saw him and McDaniel kind of jumping around a little bit. he was a guy that was like dancing off to the side a little bit. And so I'm a fan. And then obviously, you mentioned the last couple of seasons with him. I mean, he's a versatile guy, right? With the Chiefs, he was an inside linebacker. He was an edge rusher last year, primarily with the Saints, right? And for guys that have that versatility, I mean, that's super cool. And I know Weaver loves those hybrid guys, right? Those guys that can play multiple positions, right? That's why he loved Jalen Ramsey so much, because Jalen Ramsey would obviously shut down your best receiver, but then also sometimes go blitz the quarterback, right? And so I know Weaver is, I'm sure, licking his chops somewhere. I'm just thinking about ways to use Willie Gay Jr. and that versatility. So definitely the biggest surprise for me, for sure.
Who is the one player that in your mind you watched this offseason and said that guy needs the most work?
I don't want to say the most work. I want to say a guy that I was just like, I want more of. And that's, to your point, that you mentioned earlier, Kenneth Grant. I didn't see a lot, right? Granted, there is no sealer during those scrimmage portions, right? So, you got to.
No pads, no sealer.
Yes, you got to take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I didn't see much from him. Like when even last year, and granted, I came into training camp a little bit late, right? But even with Chop, right, we saw there was a few flashes every now and then where he would, get to the. There was a few where he got to the quarterback, and you're like, okay, like look, he could definitely
rush the passer.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could use.
The one thing I always remember about defensive linemen, and I get this from Cameron Wake. Cameron Wake was an elite, probably Ring of Honor worthy Dolphins pass rusher. I think he's got like 90 something sacks in his career. And Cameron Wake was annually, consistently, daily invisible in practice. It was just Cam played with a very violent style where he wasn't turning it on against his teammates. And it just, he was, you just got so accustomed to that you didn't expect him to like dominate practice. But when it came to game time, he was going to hurt somebody. And I would say the same thing about Calais. I don't think Calais was a real big practice performer last season.
Yeah, that's true.
He, his presence was there, but you didn't really see him dominate.
That's right.
I don't know what to expect from those defensive linemen at this present moment. And I don't know how much of the offensive line struggles or the lack of depth on the offensive line is contributing to what we're seeing from the defensive linemen. But then I also keep in mind that I used to watch Ryan Tannehill practice, where if there wasn't a double-digit sacks per day, it was a good day for Tannehill. It just, he had very little pocket presence and, very little understanding of timing. He just got sacked a lot. Now, did it mean that the Dolphins were sack monsters when the action was live? No. So I also think Tua's presence hinders a little bit of how often they can get to the quarterback. But to me, to address your question, the guy who needs the most work, to address my own question, let me correct that myself. The guy who needs the most work is Zach Wilson. Some days he looked like the quarterback that started for the Jets. Some days he looked like a young guy that I want to develop in. There has to be some level of consistency that comes through from him. Keep in mind, yes, he's probably a little bit elevated over Snoop Huntley in terms of talent level, skill level, arm talent. But if Tua goes down for 6 games, can he keep you at 500? And I don't know that based on what I saw.
I agree. I agree. There are some bad throws in there, and at the same time, there are some throws that's like, who is that? That wasn't Tua. Like it's, and I think that's that's been his entire career, right? Like there's been some throws where you're like, yo, like this guy can be the second coming of Aaron Rodgers, and then it's like, then he goes out there and stinks it up for a couple games. So it's like, what's the middle ground with this guy? And I mean, to your point, I think honestly, all the quarterbacks outside of Tua need a little bit of work because I didn't see much from Quinn Ewers either. I think, if we're tallying the interception leaders, I mean, Quinn Ewers took the cake.
You sure? Are you sure it wasn't Zach?
If it wasn't Quinn, it was neck and neck. It might have been 6 and 5 or 5. You know what I'm saying? It was right there because they was sometimes. It looked like sometimes they was competing for it. The amount of time they was giving that ball away at times, and to a secondary that wasn't, that has a lot to prove too.
But also when they have those pressure package days, and that's the one thing that I realized from the last day where Anthony Walker threw some pressures at Tua and the other quarterbacks. It forced their hand to throw early.
Yeah.
And secondary didn't look bad. Secondary held their own. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe you're trying to compensate for the lack of experience and proven establishedness of these cornerbacks by bringing more pressure. But, the more pressure you bring, the more load is going to put on the safeties and the secondary. And there were some instances where we saw Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane running wide open, no safety help. So it'll be interesting to see what transfolds. Obviously, we've got about another month worth of action. The Dolphins are going to begin camp a month from now in the week of June 22nd and resume training for football activities to get out there to the scrimmage and exhibition games. You all will have 11 opportunities there. You can find your tickets on dolphins.com. Definitely go subscribe if you think that there's a day. And I'm telling you right now, look at that schedule and find the last practice of every work week. If you find the last practice of every work week, you will find the best practice. And that's what you sign up for. Do not go to the first practice of the week. That's a special teams day. Don't do that. You don't want to see that. You want to go to the last practice of every week. So you do that, and I promise you'll find some action. On that note, Dolphins in Depth, we are out. We will be back next week. We'll talk about some of these units offensively and defensively and address some of our other concerns about this Miami Dolphins team. On that note, Dolphins in Depth, we are out.